just sitting on a plane looking out the window going, man, where are all the aliens? And so the other thing he talks about is like if the history of human civilization was an 800-page book, so say 160,000 years that we've been like Homo sapiens sapiens with like the kinds of civilizations that, well, even pre-civilizations, right? Nomadic peoples and so on. Then each page of that book is, 250 years? I think I'm doing that maths right. 200 years, 200 times 800, 160,000. Like, if you can open that book to almost any page and the same shit's going on.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like all the way up until basically people are wandering around with pretty primitive tools. A few of them sort of figure out how to use fire. A few of them figure out like how to use metals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A few of them figure out how to ride horses and domesticate animals. But it's basically the same shit for like 790 pages of the 800-page book of the civilization of our species. And then just towards the end, it's like the page before the very end, like the United States gets settled, Australia gets settled, the Industrial Revolution happens. And then like on the final page, if each page is 250 years of an 800-page book, it's the last half of the page. Nuclear weapons, going into space, landing on the moon, the evolution of the internet, vehicles, cars, climate change, like all of this. And it's like the final few, like Facebook and all this shit, Axie Infinity and little coins and your VR and your Orgasmatron and everything is like the final 2 lines of an 800-page book. So, sometimes sometimes people will say to me, people always think that they're living through amazing times, Josh. You think you're living through an incredible time, but I'm sure people were saying that in like the 1820s. I'm sure everyone was like, oh my God, things are changing so fast. And I'm like, no, I'm going to call bullshit on that.
Yeah.
If an alien who knew nothing about anything took that 800-page book, they'd be like, page 233 is roughly the same as page 722.
Yeah.
But they'd get to the end and they'd be like, holy shit, what's going to happen next? Like, I want to read the sequel to this book. I want to read, what's 801?
Well, that's when they would keep an eye on us. When they dropped Fat Man and Little Boy on Japan, that's when UFO sightings started happening all over the globe. There's a giant uptick in UFO sightings. Was it Kenneth Arnold was one of the first, I believe? He's the guy who spotted, I think it's Kenneth Arnold, was the guy that spotted the flying saucers. He was the first one to discuss them as saucer-shaped discs, but they started seeing them all over the place. Like there was encounters in Washington, D.C., and there was encounters over nuclear bases, and where they said that they had shut codes down. And I don't know if there was alien life, and if there is alien life out there that's aware of us, I don't know if they would intervene, because we don't really do much when we find chimps. The scientific community. Yeah. Well, the intelligent scientific community doesn't try to interfere with their life and give them guns and this is how you start a fire.
Right. But chimps have noticed that we exist.
Yes.
So, like, even if they don't come, like, I'm not talking about, like, why haven't aliens come and visited us, like, in Independence Day? I just mean, like, when we train our telescopes on the sky, why isn't there any evidence of, like, little flickering radio waves coming from somewhere? But a possible explanation is the one that you say, which is we're looking for the wrong things. Like, we've only been emitting radio waves for a century, and we might be just about to end that and go into some virtual reality metaverse or something, and maybe we'll meet them all there. Maybe we'll unlock some door of the Zuckerberg multiverse and be like, oh, here are a whole bunch of pre-existing civilizations of aliens who already exist on this platform.
Well, also, if you think about the various planets that we know exist just in our solar system and the conditions that exist on these planets, there's not a lot of them that can support life. Like, they believe that Mars at one point in time had liquid water and they had an atmosphere. And they were probably hit with some sort of an asteroid that wiped out everything. But other than that, you've got Europa that has frozen water on the outside. I mean, that's close by,
though. But when you're talking about the scale of the universe, it's almost like talking about rolling the dice on the numbers of COVID in a population. Like, you don't need very high numbers before once you go to that size.
My point was, the solar system that we exist in is very unusual. And, we obviously have a planet that exists in this Goldilocks range, but we also have an extremely large asteroid belt. And it's indicative of the initial impact between Earth 1 and Earth 2. Earth 1 was a planet that got hit by another planet.
Right.
And that's what created the moon, and they believe that also created the asteroid belt. And if there's a solar system out there that didn't have that sort of event, so didn't have to worry about these intermittent cataclysms, where, that's one of the things that Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock have done some great research on, is the indication that at least one time that we know of, while civilization existed, it was probably almost wiped out.
Right.
And it's somewhere in the Younger Dryas impact theory.
Yeah.
It's somewhere around 11,000.
Is this when we were all like 5,000 people or something, or like 10? There were only that was 70,000 years ago, and that was, I believe, was Indonesia. That was a volcano eruption. That there was a super volcano that erupted that wiped out almost everybody. And we got down to like 70,000 people or 7,000 people. They don't know exactly, but it was right about there. And then we pulled back up. We did a lot of fucking, and here we are today. But, thank God we didn't have an orgasmatron. Otherwise, people would have been in their basements with sore thumbs.
The point is, if there's a planet out there that doesn't have that issue, and let's imagine, because I don't know what the reality is when it comes to like ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, or these incredible structures that these people built, where unfortunately, because of the burning of the Library of Alexandria, we don't have the real records of how they did or how they accomplished it or who they were, or even really how long ago they really made it. We know that some of them, they've done carbon dating on some of the stuff, and they know it's at least 2,500 BC, but there's some indications that some of it might be far, far older than that. So let's imagine that there was some sort of a civilization 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago that was very advanced and was allowed to advance without any interruption, without nuclear war, without solar flares, without asteroid impacts or supervolcanoes. Maybe they lived in a much more stable climate, and they got to a place where they're 1,000,000 years more advanced than us. 1,000,000 years. Imagine what the fuck we're going to be in 1,000,000 years.
I can't even imagine what we're going to be in 100 years.
So
and then take 1,000 years, 10,000, 100,000.
Yeah, if that's the case, like if they were out there and they were watching us, they'd probably just make sure we don't blow ourselves up.
Yeah,
like
or not.
I think they would probably.
You reckon they're
rather,
benevolent?
Well, if you got to think that, I don't know if it's benevolent or malevolent. Like if you think about what a scientist is, it's someone who wants to observe but sometimes protect. Like we protect endangered species. Activists get together and they say, hey, there's only a few of these birds left. We have to do whatever we can to preserve them. If they have that same mentality about the human race, I think they would have a pretty standoffish attitude and just sort of wait for us to figure it out. And especially if they look at the acceleration of our innovation and this exponential acceleration of technology. And
I can't remember if it was like Michio Kaku or Neil deGrasse Tyson or one of those like great science guys who was saying like maybe any civilization that would be advanced enough to be able to reach out to us or to be noticed by us would also have to be the kind of civilization that would not be a predatory colonizing species, because in that case it would have devoured itself with internal squabbles before
Klingons.
then. Yeah, you basically have to reach a certain level of spiritual and psychological wisdom and self-awareness and compassion in order to sustain yourself over the course of you know, so far we've had a couple of 100 years since the Industrial Revolution, and it's only been less than a century that we've had nukes.
Yeah.
We've had the ability to actually do some serious damage on a global scale. We're just kids. We are toddlers with an AR-15 right now. I mean, we don't know what we're doing, and we're going to have to grow up into adults, and we're going to, you know, have a grown-up civilization.